I am going to talk about kind of what you see behind me. Who doesn't love black and white fabric? And right now we have a lot of black and white fabric. And every time I walk past it, I go, oh, it's so pretty. But I just get the urge to color it. So we get to color today. Hooray! We get to color. So the first thing you want to do before you tackle any coloring on fabric is take your piece of fabric. This will just help and iron a piece of freezer paper on the back. Good old freezer paper. The nice thing with freezer paper is it can be used more than once. So you're not limited. Iron it on, do some coloring, peel it off, move it over. I'm using freezer paper more and more for transferring designs. So I have done a whole ton of practicing and testing and washing and not washing and pressing and playing, even on plain, I'll hold it up here, even on plain white fabric. We'll get to that later. And so I have actually managed to be semi-organized with this.
You're super organized.
Yeah, not always. So basically you can break down what you use to decorate your fabric into 3 types of products. First things, basically permanent stuff, things that's going to stay on the fabric through washing, especially gentle washing. And obviously one of the first things, maybe if I tuck that underneath. There, yeah, that'll work. I put a piece of cardboard under here, even though I have the freezer paper, because you never know when stuff is going to leak through. So now you can see I've got my fabric here, I've got my freezer paper. So when it comes to permanent things, you can obviously opt for permanent fabric markers. And we have sets like this. Permanent fabric markers, dual tips, so you're going to have a fat end for filling in areas and a sharper end for some delicate work. It recommends heat set is required, water resistant, good on cotton based fabrics, and laundry safe temperature up to 60 degrees Celsius. So obviously fabric markers. This is another type. This is our Fabrico fabric markers. And these guys you can actually buy individually, and they have kind of a brushy end, which I think works pretty good. This is good, and I chose this fabric because I'd seen it out there, and then we got the flowered one in, and I'm going, I should have picked the fabric one. So you can see it's got the brush end, but it also has almost like a marker end. I find the marker end to be a little darker. So, and that's the intensity. Maybe this kind of fabric is a good thing because the intensity really shows up of the markers. So that's one thing that is definitely permanent on fabric. The other thing that is permanent right out of the box is, where'd Don set the, here we are, is our Lumiere, turn it around, Lumiere paints. And these are fabric paints. The main difference between these, and this is a lovely starter set, it's called the Exciter Pack, has a little bit of glitz and glimmer to it. Gorgeous metallic and pearlescent colors. And I know we sort of featured these guys at Christmas time, but I like reruns. I don't know about you. This, we actually brought them in, oh, so long ago when Helen Godden was due, back in March of 2020. So these are actually a paint that you can brush onto your fabric. And the main difference between these and a marker is that these are going to have texture on your fabric. So once they're dry, and they don't take that long to dry, when you run your finger over it, you will feel it almost like a little bit of a rubbery surface. So that's also something to know. Obviously, water cleanup, water soluble, so you don't have to have any special products for your brush. I don't know, you're not going to see this on the camera, but that's got a purple base and a gold pearlescence to it, this particular one. I just grabbed one out of the package. So I'm brushing it on fairly thickly, but if I stroke it across, I can feather the edges. If you're feeling artistic, you can always do softer looks with our Lumiere paints. How are we doing? Sparkly. Yes, sparkly's always nice. We should call Sandy. So yeah, this was a great little set that we brought in for Helen. And we still have quite a number of them. It's a good way to decorate your fabric, especially over smaller areas, or maybe I think it would be fun to get the kids painting with those and make yourself some placemats, or make grandma some placemats, or some pot holders or something out of those, because washable and you don't have to worry about it smudging off. But when I first started testing this, I thought, I wonder how other things work. I didn't really want to open a package of our fabric markers. So I went to my tickle trunk here, and I thought, what have I got in the drawer? I have dry erase markers. How would they work? And what I discovered in my practice session is I would call them, semi-permanent, kind of permanent markers, in that if you use them on your fabric, I want to swing this around so that you guys can see well. If you use the dry erase marker on your fabric and you let it dry, then it doesn't bleed a whole lot once you put water on it. So I wouldn't go coloring a whole quilt with these if it was a quilt that was going to be washed a lot. But it's got a really nice feel on the fabric. Oh, this is a nice bright one. So good old dry erase markers. Fills in the areas nicely and very little bleed over. I think that's why it was good to test on a fabric like this, because I've got the lines. It's like a coloring book, but it also let me tell whether that particular product was going to soak into the cotton enough to bleed over. There we go. I'm just going to do those 4 with that guy. Good old dry erase markers, and I'm going to show you. I was just doing another test here just before we started. So these guys are done with dry erase markers, spritzed with water, no problem there. And then I went, well, golly, if dry erase markers will work, I wonder about Sharpie markers. And yes, I have a lot of Sharpie markers. I'm a pen person. I like my markers. So this one was a little disappointing, I have to admit. The large size Sharpie marker, when you start laying it on the fabric, especially if you have fresh new ones like this, you can see it starts to bleed in. So not quite so good for delicate work, but maybe there's an area where you want it to bleed. They give you good rich colors. But you can see how it's spreading there. Anytime you want to try a new technique or a new process, or you just want to have fun, get a small scrap of fabric and play. Test it. Try it out. Tickle trunk. Yay. There we go. See? So that's bleeding in, and I'm going, But I also have finer tip Sharpies. So the advantage with that is a finer tip is not going to deliver quite so much ink at any one time. So it's going to take longer to fill it in. But maybe you just want to do some text on the corner of a quilt block. And you know it's a quilt that's not going to be washed a lot. So now by the time you get down this fine in your world of markers, you can see how long that's taking to fill that space. Takes a little longer, but then you can always color softly for a blended effect. I'm a shader. I love to shade things, so I like these guys. I would just go like that. Down the edge. But by the time you get down that fine, you could always go to one of the permanent Micron markers like that. Everybody seeing that good? Yeah, good. So these are, they come in different size tips. These all happen to be 0.01, and they are a permanent marker. Most often people are used to these for writing on their quilt labels. So again, very fine tip on that, but a nice way to add just a little bit of something to your quilt. I'm not sure how well something that fine is going to show up on camera, but little tiny pen lines. So that is always a good option for very fine work. If you're getting into art quilting, those are wonderful. So after I explored markers and I tested with water, and I thought, I'm not so, that doesn't thrill me. This is kind of fun. So what else can we use? And I personally am a pencil person. I love working with pencils. So unfortunately though, pencils on fabric are the last level. They're not permanent hardly at all, but they can give you some amazing effects. So the first one I'm going to show you, these are, I'll turn it this way, These are the Kimberbell watercolor pencils. And they come in this lovely tube set like this. How many? 12 premium watercolor pencils. This is actually Leah's set that I'm borrowing. Nice and sharp. And it also comes with a water fillable brush pencil thingy here. This guy. So you just fill up that little tube with water, and you have the brush that you use to blend your colors. And I'm going to use, let's stick in the color range. Let's use the purple one. So now we are working with a pencil on fabric. And that's why we've got our freezer paper. As you can see, it's not wiggling around too much. So with these guys, you're going to fill the area. And I'm not going to use Leah's little brush I have, since I have my brush out. Then when you apply water to them, they blend right into the fabric, flow right out to that corner. Color intensifies just like that. There we go. A little too much water with my brush there. This lets you blend, let's see. So what if we took two colors, we're kind of in sort of a, working in a small area here. And I put a little water there, so I can blend those two colors together. Oh, I see sunsets. Look at that. Now, with that sort of a product, when you're completely finished whatever it is you want to color, then you would want to, if you wanted to use it on a product that, or on a project that you want to wash afterwards, you would have to set that with a product called textile medium. And you can pick that up at art supply stores and things like that, because we're mostly getting into the art quilting world now. So we're talking about small panels, we're talking about maybe things that we're not planning on washing. And then I resurrected my Prismacolors that I've had for, golly, since the 80s. I have a new set, but these are my old friends. Now, Prismacolor makes a very soft leaded pencil, so you're going to get really good color fill with that. And I could, like Leah said, just spend a whole evening with some of these black and white fabrics, coloring it in with my pencils like this. Maybe I'll have to do that. Fill that in. But this one definitely, this doesn't wash off. It's pretty water resistant. These soft leaded colored pencils. But what I found with them, and I'm going to show you, I'm just going to do that much. If I take my finger on that area and rub it, that color just bleeds over onto there. Gets on your fingers too. Kids will love that. So they're great if you want to do, what if you wanted to do a background for some landscape quilting that you're doing? Couldn't find anything you liked, so you could get out your pencils, color your background, take something like your finger, something with a little bit of grip to it, and smooth those colors around. So lots of different options to fill in the spaces on your coloring fabric. I like coloring fabric. Let's try a different color. So, again, however you want to apply it, just be aware. Now, a firmer lead pencil is probably not going to rub off as much, but it's going to be a little harder to apply to the fabric. So after I'd played with all my goodies in my tickle trunk, I thought, gosh, I wonder what would happen if I tried it on plain white fabric, which I'd lost. Here we are. So this little sample is a piece of what we generally refer to as the tone-on-tone whites. And we've got lots of these, and very often they're beautifully printed designs. I discovered years ago that these tone-on-tone whites take fabric dye beautifully. A really nice design on those, and if you dip that in fabric dye, the fabric would change to the color of the dye, but the design is put on with paint, so it resists the dye a little bit. So I thought, I wonder what would happen if I tried using the markers on something like this. So this is where my fabric happens to be printed, you can probably tell, with butterflies. So I thought, maybe it's okay if the stuff bleeds through a little bit. If I color around some of the white areas on this butterfly, yes, down in there. Now what would happen if I wet this down? And what I discovered was that both the Sharpies and the dry erase were a lot more permanent, a lot less likely to run if you just leave them alone and let them rest for a bit. So that's not seeping in too much. That's my dry erase marker. It could also be color sensitive. So that was going around the white area, but what if I just went like this? I had this bright idea of taking these white tone on tones and just finding something where I could color squares of color over top of them and see what would happen. That is obscuring the white paint a little too much, darker color. You can see some of these other areas where I've played with a mixture of water, and most often your dry erase markers are alcohol. Didn't have any alcohol here. It wasn't alcohol day, so it would be fun. So you're not limited to printed fabrics. You could work on a tone white and just fill in some of those areas. Well, if you can work on white fabric, what about fabric like this? That is a white print on a black background. Now it doesn't matter if the colors are going to bleed through, because nobody's going to see it on the black fabric. So I thought, well, let's try that. So I did an orange flower. Is that showing it? That shows up fairly. Let's do a pink one. Now this is something I think even the kids could just have fun with. Pick up some black, predominantly black fabric with some white patterning on it. And even the youngest kid can just fill in over top there and make a pink flower. And then, oh, colors. Yeah, I'm a color junkie, I know. Make some green stems. This. And you don't have to do every color. Even if you had black fabric with big white polka dots on it, wouldn't it be fun to take your marker and just do every so far around? Just a dot here and a dot there. Throw a red dot on, or if a pink dot if you're feeling in a pink mood. There, we'll do a nice red flower. So lots of possibilities when it comes to coloring on fabric. Lots of ways you can use markers, you can use pencils, and of course I was looking online before we started off today, and I ran into a quilt artist, and this is just went on my bucket list, who does a whole cloth quilted panel. I would start small, so she already has all of the stitching down, and then she works with pencils, with a soft lead pencil, and shades in those areas. So if you have a feather shape, you could shade that in with your pencils, heat set it, brush it with textile medium, or you could paint it with the nice pearlescent Lumiere paints. That would be amazing too. That's about all the fun we're going to have for today. Hope it gives you some ideas. I hope it gives you permission to play. One of my favorite sayings, I've got the sign up in the long arm area, says, creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep. So be creative, be as creative as you want. Get yourself some small squares of fabric and just have fun. Get out those markers. About the only thing I probably wouldn't use is something labeled washable markers because they are designed to wash out. So anyway, that's about it for today. Until we join you next time, stay kind, stay calm, and stay safe, everybody. Have a great weekend. Take care. We'll talk to you later.